The sponsor has been identified, but unlike most television programs, the performer hasn't been provided with a script. As a matter of fact, I have been permitted to choose my own words and discuss my own ideas regarding the choice that we face.
Welcome to the Open Train of Thought podcast. I'm Sam Blue Sr. We believe that understanding begins with listening, even when those opinions are different, which is why we encourage open dialogue on the issues that impact our communities, culture, education, politics, and future. So thank you for joining us for real conversations with real perspective and with real people. So sit back, get comfortable, and join the conversation as we take a ride on the Open Train of Thought podcast. I'd like to first welcome our guest panelist, Coach Carl Jackson. And I want to just ask you if you could just, just give a little bit on your background.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Sam, I really appreciate it. Just to give a little bit of perspective of who I am. I started off in youth football, coaching my son. It's a great way to mentor other kids. I think it helps me just as much as it helps them in just everyday life aspect. And now I currently coach at Southeast Raleigh High School, still doing the same thing. I think it's great. It's a great opportunity to show kids, there's another way of life outside of maybe what they're used to.
Okay. I really appreciate that. And I think I've known you for probably a little under 10 years. But ever since I've known you, I know that, your priority has been mentorship. And I think any coach, you're not just a role model, but you are a mentor. You help guide and mold, these athletes. And a lot of times I think that mothers need to have their sons kind of like having that positive male figure. So kind of like, iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel. Sometimes they just need more firmness. And mothers can't always give that to them. So we wanted to cover 3 topics today. And the first one was kind of about what the NCAA has come out. And before I ask you the question, I'm just going to play a video so we can kind of just break down what's going on with that.
Okay.
We are back with a new push to fight the wave of Republican redistricting efforts across the South, seeking to wipe out the few Democratic-held congressional seats in states like Alabama, South Carolina, and Louisiana. The NAACP is now urging Black student athletes to boycott athletic programs at public universities in states that are pushing maps that the group says restrict Black voting rights. The group's president says Republican-led Southern states are seeking to reinstitute a sharecropping reality by recruiting Black athletic talent to play for flagship universities while limiting Black voters' ability to elect candidates of their choice. Joining us now is the national director of the NAACP's Youth and College Division, Tyleek McMillan. Tyleek, explain the strategy here and how many schools are we even talking about?
Yeah, the Out of Bounds campaign is ultimately about accountability, power, and the value of Black lives beyond performance. We are seeking and asking institutions to recognize that Black students and athletes are not just assets to be celebrated on game day, but they are human beings who are deserving of protection and representation in that investment. Everything in our lives is political because policy shapes our everyday existence. I think about my time graduating from North Carolina A&T. My first time voting in a presidential election was as a student. So understanding that the political power that students have on their campuses as they're being shifted to these universities to play sports, understanding and centering that is going to be important.
And again, we're talking about Southern states that are the focus of this campaign, right? What states, what universities are you targeting?
Yeah, well, as we're looking at the southern states, as you mentioned here on the map, as we're looking at our Mississippis and our Floridas, in our Louisianas, where we are seeing these attacks in broad daylight. This campaign is a call to students, but it's also a deeper charge to families and alumni and consumers and faith leaders and communities to think critically about where we invest our time, our talent, and our visibility and our dollars. Black athletes and Black students generate enormous economic value for universities and states. Entire athletic programs and conference deals and institutional brandings are strengthened by Black talent and Black cultural influence. And so we are asking a fundamental question. If institutions benefit from Black excellence, why should they remain siloed when Black representation and democracy are under attack?
And I know this campaign was just announced, but have you heard from any student athletes yet who plan to participate in the boycott?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been in conversation with student athletes. We've been in conversation with professional athletes, professional coaches. And I would just say that our young people are paying attention to more than ranking in facilities. They are asking whether a campus is willing or a university is willing to defend their diversity, their equity, and their inclusion, to defend their voting rights and the truth in education. And so silence from these institutions sends a message, and it tells Black students whether they are valued only for what they produce or respected as full members of the campus community. And so we want to ensure that this generation understands their influence is directly impacted. Young people know where they commit their talents and visibility as economic and political weight. And we want to ensure that we are putting that pressure on these universities to speak up for their students, not only on, but also off the field.
Tyleek.
Okay, so basically, the project is called Out of Bounds that the NAACP has started, and is basically trying to encourage Black athletes to turn down NIL from the SEC, turn down that money, and to make a stand. So I just want to know your thoughts on that. And I guess the question is, the NAACP has urged Black athletes to reconsider attending SEC schools. Do you believe this is an effective way to push a change, or does it limit opportunities for these young athletes?
I mean, in my opinion, I feel like it limits opportunities for these athletes. You have some of these kids that have, since they were a child in the states that they've been in, that have dreamed of going to certain schools. I'm from Louisiana. If you play football in Louisiana, you typically dream about going to LSU. That would be like your go-to school. But man, I would love to see top athletes go to Southern University or Grambling University, or even A&T, which is where I went to college. All those things I think are great, but I feel like by putting that type of pressure on 18, 19-year-olds to say, hey, because this happened, we want you not to go here, can really change the trajectory of what they've had for their hopes, their dreams, and what they've wanted to do for their families.
Okay. The one thing when I hear that I think about is they talk about these young Black athletes and the amount of money in NIL, which we'll talk about a little later, is millions now.
Yeah.
There's athletes that I know that they're getting $50K a month, up to $100K, and even more if you're a quarterback. So you have quarterbacks, NIL money, they're receiving upwards of $20 million for a 4-year career, which is more than 99% of people making their whole lifetime. So I think when you ask a 17 or 18-year-old to change, to stand up and turn down an opportunity that could change their family's life, I think you're asking too much, because he has an opportunity, or he or she has an opportunity to like literally lay the foundation for generational wealth. To take that money, buy real estate, buy all these things that can generate that wealth. So do you think that they are asking too much of these kids at this time, and kind of like shutting their family down on the prosperity?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah. I mean, honestly, just if I put myself in those shoes, I mean, I come from a 2-parent household. have a mother and father, but if I ever had an opportunity like that to take care of them, I would have jumped at it. I just think that it's a lot of pressure to put on 16, 17, 18-year-olds to basically hold up the whole community. I feel like as adults, we should be the ones carrying the mantle. We should be the ones bearing the issues. It should be more for the adults. I understand why they want to do it to the to the SEC, because of course cash is king, right? So if you can affect their pockets, you can hopefully have that type of change. But I feel like it's a lot to ask for a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, 18-year-old to go in there and do that type of thing, just on a maturity level. Like you said, if you have the opportunity to change your family's life, not just for you, but for generations to come, like that's the American dream. Like that's really what everybody wants to do. That's why these guys play football. I mean, it's a dangerous sport, and the goal is to get to it was the NFL, but now if you can get to college, you can be set. You can be set after college if you make the right decisions. So I just feel like it's just a lot to put on them, especially not knowing their situation, what they're going through, and how they could really make a change in their lifetime for their whole family.
Yeah. Well, we do have a question in the comments from Hilda. Her question is, are there NIL in the HBCUs? And there actually is NIL. Yeah. In all NCAA sports, they have NIL. The problem is that the PWIs, the primarily white institutions, their alumni tends to give back a whole lot more. They take more involvement in the education, and I won't say education. They take more part in the athletics, especially if the program is winning. I know when Nick Saban was finishing his last contract at Alabama, the boosters in the NIL paid off his $8 million home. So I think when it comes to HBCUs, we have some people that attend HBCUs. My son attended North Carolina A&T, yeah. And it was right the year after he left was when NIL started, like literally. So missed out on a lot of money. But certain conferences, especially mid-majors, they can't compete with the booster support from Alabama or University of Miami, Tennessee, Clemson, NC State even. So I think that's the reasoning. Unfortunately, when we start to give more alumni giving back to the programs, I think the NIL will definitely increase. And I hope I answered your question, Hilda, but in short, there is NIL in all college sports, track, even tennis, golf. It's just the boosters basically dictate where the majority of that money goes to. A booster don't want to go to an arena and, be on the sideline bragging about how they donated this much money and the team is getting blown out 63-0. They're paying that money because they feel that their seats will become more valuable, their bragging rights, as you could say. So I think once we start to get more support for HBCU alumnus to give back, I think we will definitely see growth rather than HBCUs just being a springboard for kids to come, show out, and cook on their freshman year, sophomore year, then transfer out because A&T doesn't have enough NIL money to keep them. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, like I said, I went to A&T. Majority of my uncles, like I said, being from Louisiana, went to either Southern. A lot of my cousins went to Grambling. My aunt went to LSU. That being said, I mean, it really comes down to who has the most money. And when you look at HBCUs, just like you said, the donors, even though you do have some universities that do have big donors, you don't have enough of those donors to make up for what like you said, a PWI can actually provide for some of these kids. But also look at like some of the change that can be done, like when Deion went to Jackson State, that type of excitement, getting Travis Hunter as the #1 overall player to go play at HBCUs. Also had some other kids say, hey, I want to go play HBCUs. But then, when Colorado came a knocking, $54 million or however many millions of dollars, $5 million a year or whatever to coach up there, he took that opportunity, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to grow and everybody wants to compete at the highest level. So when you start talking to these athletes and say, hey, go compete at HBCUs, there's some kids that could go at HBCUs and absolutely dominate, right? But they're going to want to compete at the highest level because, of course, at the end of the day, a majority of them, I'm not going to say all of them, but a good majority of them want to try to make it to the NFL. So it's also about the exposure.
Yeah, from what I know when we went on college visits, I remember when we went up to Rutgers and they did their spill with the academic, they did their academic presentation.
Mhm.
And my son's coach, the Panagos, who would have been coaching him, he basically leaned over and said, you know what, we just got to get through this. He's like, these kids don't care about the academics. They just want to play ball. And when you go to places like Georgia, or Ohio State even, their academic presentation lasts 10 or 15 minutes. Yet when we went to Georgetown, it was 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
So I think you do have to look at it, but at the end of the day, I think for these athletes, the goal is to get as much money. And now you have college players getting more money than some of, college players are getting paid more than guys in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think that right there is why we're starting to see, like, Indiana had 6-year, 5 and 6 year players, because now you're having players that don't want to leave college. They want to stay in, and they're trying to appeal to get an additional year.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, we have a comment. A few star athletes who have passed on to the pros anonymously stated that they always felt the system was built for tier corruption status, on a tier corruption status. Your thoughts? What do you think about that question?
I mean, I guess it depends on what he means by tier corruption status. I think depending on where you play and who you play with, as people say, Bama has always paid players, right? And now the playing field is even now, right? I really don't understand 100% what he meant by the tier corruption. If he could expound on that, then I'll be able to answer it. But okay. I don't want to say it the wrong way. You know what I mean?
Oh, I definitely understand also. So if the student athletes receives a life-changing scholarship offer from an SEC school, should social and political concerns outweigh the athletic education and financial opportunities? For me, it's no. Without a doubt, no. They need to prioritize their family and their community first.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I know I agree with you 100%, because let's be honest, what happens after 3 or 4 years when all of a sudden changes happen? This guy missed out on millions of dollars. Who's going to help take care of his family then? And that's the thing that you have to take a look at. And that's why I say I feel like, to me, a certain extent, that was kind of selfish to try to put that pressure on these kids, because if you have an opportunity to change your life's, your family's lifestyle, change their generational wealth to pass down for forever, you have a chance to invest, set yourself up for forever. Why would you pass that up? Because at the end of the day, even if he does go out there and do all those different things, when you're done being used, what happens?
Yep. They move on. When you graduate, they have recruits waiting in line, to take your place.
Yeah.
And I think, I definitely agree with you with that. While we wait for to check out the comments to see if he, kind of like pinpoints kind of like the answer to explain what, the tier corruption, we'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
The next topic is the high number of 8th grade reclassifications. So what I'm what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to go ahead and play a video just speaking to it. But I believe in the last 6 years, it had quadrupled. Even though these players are passing 8th grade, their parents are pulling them out and taking them to a private school and just paying for them to reclass and have that extra year. So here's the video.
A common practice among college freshmen is now emerging among 8th graders. A growing number of middle school athletes are tapping into the red shirt trend and delaying their start to high school. Our senior national correspondent William Lajeunesse is live from our West Coast newsroom. We're all interested to hear this. William?
So, Sandra, did your parents ever say, you better get your grades up, little lady, or you're going to repeat 8th grade? Well, now some 13-year-olds are doing it by choice, hoping to get into a better school, a bigger scholarship, or more NIL money.
I play baseball because I love the game, but it's cool to know that if I do what I love, I'll get a little bit of money out of it.
Carter Cancellieri is attending 8th grade a second time by choice.
It's given him an extra year to work on both his academic skills and his athletic skills.
15-year-old Carter is part of a growing trend of young athletes reclassing.
It's for students that are currently in 8th grade, and they get an additional year of middle school to delay their start of high school. Once you start high school, you have a 4-year clock, academically and athletically.
Michael Hatcher started the Elite Performance Academy at a public middle school in Orange County, California.
Kids can come in person and have access to 2 separate classes. One is a speed and agility class and also a strength and power class.
After losing students to private schools, Hatcher decided to give parents what they wanted.
I'm witnessing more people doing it and doing it wrong, to be honest, or doing it loudly.
Consultant Shanae Howard offers families a reality check.
It's a 1% chance for them to go D1. 1%. For D2, 1%.
Of 8 million high school students in sports, only 7% will play in college. So far, 10 students signed up for Hatcher's Performance Academy. But across town, enrollment at this private sports program is booming. It's not cheap. Parents pay thousands a year at schools like this, but believe the investment is worth it.
Hopefully when I get to the MLB and I'm making a lot more money than $50K, I'll be able to pay him back.
Well worth it. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
So skeptics say, given the odds of making it D1 or any college sports, kids are better off concentrate, most of them, on academics. On the other hand, Sandra, right, the number 1 pick in this year's NBA draft, expected anyway, did 8th grade twice. So the point is there are options out there for parents who want it. Back to you.
Okay. So after seeing that video, I'm going to ask you, because more families are having children repeat 8th grade now to gain an extra year of physical and athletic development. Is this smart long-term planning, or does it create an unfair advantage over other students? Because normally 7th, 8th grade, they're really hitting puberty. Yeah. And I've seen kids that, when they were in the 7th grade, and by 9th grade, they look completely different. So basically, I think when they reclass, they're basically a 9th grader playing with 7th and 8th graders. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know here, like when those students do reclass, they can't play middle school ball, but they are allowed to play youth football. They'll play like 13U, 14U. I think there's a lot of different reasons why people reclass. I think a lot of it has to do with getting a scholarship. I also think sometimes like some kids are just younger, like they started school early, and just to give them an opportunity to actually compete, some of them do reclass. I think some people reclass just so they can be bigger, faster, stronger. At this point, when you, as a coach once told me, youth football is when it's fun. Once you hit middle school, now you're making business decisions, right? And I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying, hey, what do I have to do to give my kid a better opportunity? Now, I don't necessarily say reclassing helps. I think it helps some people. I think some kids that were going to be good anyway are still good. Like I look at the kid that's running back at Southeast Raleigh, Christian Freeman. Still 3-star prospect from NC State, never reclassed. Now, had he reclassed, who knows? Maybe he could have been 4-star, 5-star, who knows? But there are players out there that didn't have to reclass. James Adams didn't have to reclass and still getting offers. So it's one of those things that if they did reclass, maybe they could have had bigger stars, because maybe they're playing kids that, maybe they're a little bit older than, and so they do have that little bit of an edge. And I know you've coached football before. And one thing, is there was a reasons why they had age limits, because if you got a 13-year-old playing a 12-year-old, they can be the same size, but that 13-year-old might be a little bit more aggressive than, an 11-year-old about to turn 12. Right. So I feel like it could be an advantage to some. And I feel like for some, if you're honest with yourself and you're honest with who your kid is and what they can do, it may be something that benefits you. But if you're a kid, if you're just doing it hoping to get an edge, it doesn't necessarily always work that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I do know that once you start high school, you do have that clock, like they mentioned in the video.
Mm-hmm.
So I think no matter what, you're going to do better. Athletically, you're going to do better because your body has already almost adjusted to that puberty. Now, there were some athletes that I worked with in the past, and one young man, he was smaller, what we would call a late bloomer.
Yeah.
And I would basically tell him, I'm like, dude, if you work as hard as you work for me, you're not going to have no issue. You're going to be a D1 player, because I feel like you have the division that you end up in, to me, could be a reflection of your work. I know players where parents have said, oh, they're D2 or D3, but when I work with athletes, I'm trying to make them quit. Like they're going through the gauntlet like the whole time, 3-4 hours. I don't want you to come back if you don't want it. And a lot of them went off to Division I major programs, mid majors. When they first walked in the door, they were D2 or D3 from what their parents would say. So I think now, because of all the NIL, even in high school, you have players in high school now signing endorsements, signing all those things. And I'm sitting here like, wow, the head start that they're getting, is amazing. And, it's gotten to the point even to where, how you'll see people commit to colleges, these high schoolers. I'm starting to see on social media people committing to other high schools, like they're transferring. I'll see this thing across Instagram saying so-and-so's transferring from Hunt to here, and they're doing it an announcement like it's college. And that's what's getting crazy. But everything now is about social media, about going viral. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree. I think social media plays a huge part in that. A lot of stuff is built on hype. And I think sometimes making those announcements, those kids like to make those announcements because they want the world to know, like, hey, I'm here, I'm going to the show. I want to be able to let people know, because sometimes, especially if you come from like a lower classification, people say, hey, you dominated because you were 3A, 4A, little kids, you were playing. When you go 7A, 8A, it's a different ball game. Like, some people want to let people know. I even see 8th graders now doing posters to what high school they're going to. And I think a lot of it's just social media, no Instagram, no Facebook, nothing like that. Then you probably wouldn't have it. But being that there's social media out there, and that's a huge part of young adults now. When we were growing up, we didn't have that. So that being like, a lot of people live for the likes is what I would say.
Yeah. And, when you mentioned the classifications, I remember running back Todd Gurley, and he was the #1 ranked player. It was him and a guy named Keith Marsh who would go back and forth, but mostly Todd Gurley would be ranked at that #1 spot. Keith was at a 4A school and Todd was at a 2A.
Yep.
Now, I do tell people that there's 2 players that I feel out of high school, they were ready for the NFL. One of those players was Dexter Lawrence that played for Wake Forest, and Todd Gurley, because he was over 200 pounds, going into his senior year. But I've never seen that, so I understand that growth. So I just imagine that 8th graders getting that extra year to go to where a lot of people in college, like there's guys now graduating a year early from high school so they can get that red shirt, but they can get with the program, they can get in film, they can get in the playbook, and they can use the resources of that weight room. There was a guy, Thayer Thomas at NC State. His first year, he went in as a walk-on, had scholarship offers to other schools, mid-majors, but he wanted to go to NC State. And I think he put on like 32 pounds the first semester because he had the meal program, he had the weight training, he had all of those things. And by the end of that semester, he had also earned a full scholarship. So I think he's like just one of those dogs, like he would just come in and just train like it was the end of the world. And I think sometimes when you mention the social media, I think sometimes the social media, I don't want these kids to rely so much more on the social media versus the hard work. Like you can have somebody with, these kids now, they have clip art, they have all these apps and stuff to make these highlight videos. And you see this highlight video and this kid is amazing in the highlight because the way it was cut and spliced, but then you go see him in person in the garbage. Like he is not the player. So have there been many players that you heard the hype and once y'all went toe to toe with him, you walked away and like, man, this kid is not all that.
Yeah, man, I hate to say it, man. We've ran into some of those kids throughout my career here, and I'll tell you, like a coach told me, I took a player to a visit, and the coach says, I hate highlight films because whenever I go see that kid in person, 95% of the time, not 95% of the time, I'm disappointed. So he'll rather just go see a kid in person than watch a highlight film. Because like you said, you can cut it any kind of way you want. The hardest thing about highlight films is a lot of kids are looking for the perfect highlight film. So they're not looking at film to see how they get better. They look at film as how I can post this on Instagram. And so they're not looking at, hey, what did I do wrong that I could do better? What can I do to stack these days? What can I do to get 1% better? It's not that. It's like, hey, do I look good in this drip? And when I take a picture, make sure you take a picture. Because on our sideline, we may have 6-7 people with cameras taking pictures. Like literally, you can go and buy a package to where a guy will come out and take pictures of you while you're in the middle of the game, or put a highlight film together for you. Like football or sports just in general is now a much bigger business than it was 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, I've seen advertisement for, these are high schoolers charging $100, $150 to just go to a game, just to video a player, to put that film together. And I love the hustle. However you can, you doing it legally, like you can't hate that. You love that grind. And
I love the entrepreneurship of it.
Oh yeah, I love entrepreneurship, definitely. And I just think that is the fear that I have is that I think now, and we'll get into the NIL, but when it comes to reclassification, there's a lot of colleges. I speak to college coaches, and they're not even recruiting high school kids anymore unless they're a 4 or 5 star. And they look for that 4 or 5 star because that saves them a little work. Like I tell kids all the time, I'm grinding. They're like, I'm grinding, coach, I'm grinding, but I don't got no offers, but so-and-so got offers. I said, look, as soon as you get that first one, now you're going to be on the map for all the other schools in that conference. The fan base is going to be looking at you. And a lot of times coaches won't offer because they think that they know you're better than what they are, that you're going to go somewhere else, because especially now, because they don't have the NIL, to be able to pay you. They know this power forward school is going to be able to pay you a whole lot more. I mean, you look at the coaching staff, I think A&T, they're normally, not the head coach, but like position coaches, they're anywhere from 60 to 85,000. But then you look at a Power 5 like Rutgers, position coaches, like the minimum's like 385, on up to like 800K, so it is one of those things that they get that money from the boosters, from the supporters. So I think it's definitely going to change, because I think there was a kid that was in Greensboro, North Carolina, Grimsley High School, a quarterback, and he wanted to get NIL, and the North Carolina Athletics Association was like, no, it's a violation because you're an amateur athlete. So he sued and won. Once he did that, now I see people in the Cap 8. They got endorsements for gloves, for cleats, for like, it's opened up so much more. And I just hope that the families are preparing them financially. I hope the families are kind of like making sure like they can sign agents now.
Yeah.
And I know, to me, a sign of a good agent is when that agent asks, well, let's set up an appointment so I can meet your team. Like this is 16, 17-year-old, and the agent is like, I need to see your team. Who do you have around you?
Yeah.
Because even though you could be this amazing athlete, your team, I know they have more pull on your say. And if I don't see a good foundation in them, they don't have to be perfect, but if I don't see a good foundation, like our school may not be for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's a sign, and there's a lot of good, I think, agencies, Priority Sports, Jordan Sports Group, like it's so much, all these people, like there's coaches now at the high school level saying, shoot, I work with this athlete, I know I can be an agent. Because all you have to do is negotiate numbers and try to make sure as much as that money is guaranteed as possible, because at the end of the day, this kid could go off to college, blow out. I think there's the athlete, Keith Marshall, went to Georgia,
ACL.
first year, tore ACL on the right side.
Yep.
Came back strong the following year, tore his left ACL. Came back and tore his ACL again. So I think he ended up going, he did, he signed as an undrafted free agent, I think, to the Redskins, doing great, but I think he hurt his elbow or something. So you never know what snap can be that player's last. So I feel like they need to get as much compensation, because people don't say Alabama is a great school because of the education. It's a state school. They don't say NC State is a great school because of the education. What makes schools great are their athletic programs. That's when they get the UNC Chapel Hill. It's a lot of people on there doing domyhomework.com and getting people to log in with their Blackboard account to do their work for them. But people will say UNC Chapel Hill is a good school. But I told somebody, it's a public school. It's not like Duke. It's not like Georgetown. It's a public school. Everybody, when my son was first thinking about Rutgers, people were like, oh man, that's a great school. And I'm like, it's a state school, and it just happens to be the only state school in New Jersey.
Right.
And so I just think like we drive that, and the sports at every college is what drives how popular that is. I think UNC is like one of the top grossing as far as merchandise. But I think a lot of that has to do with Jordan, Kenny Smith, all, like they Julius Peppers, Bracy Walker, they have people that, kind of like went off to the NFL, and they kept saying, UNC helped do this foundation. Whether they're lying or not, they're still shouting out that school.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. And one thing you have to understand too with a lot of these schools, and when you start thinking about agents, you want to make sure you have the right foundation around you. And I tell kids like that all the time that, you're only going to be as strong as your foundation, right? And so I worry a little bit about with some of the agents, because you never really know the full true intention. Like no different than kids and grown men in the NFL get taken advantage of because they didn't, do the proper homework or didn't have a team educated enough around him. So I always encourage kids like, hey, whatever you do, you need to make sure you have some educated people around you. Make sure you have your own safety nets. Make sure that no matter what happens, you can take care of yourself. So I think that needs to be the biggest focal point, especially when you're talking to some of these high schools that are getting these NIL deals while they're still in high school. And as far as like Alabama, you're exactly right. School's popularity, and I hate to keep using the same reference, but when Deion went to Colorado, their requests for admittance went, I want to say it was like 200%. Like they had way more students wanting to come to Colorado than they've had in like 2 decades. And they didn't have enough slots, all because he was at the school. And they didn't win a lot of games that first year. But again, it was Deion Sanders or Shador. It was Travis Hunter. And then when they start winning that second year, it just kept going up. So it's like if your sports, or you have somebody that's that popular when it comes to sports, it can truly change your program. I mean, look at Carolina when Bill Belichick came in and what everybody was saying, like Chapel Bill, all these different things that, that they were saying, that really made it popular for that period because of that name. So, people definitely get excited about whether you have coaches or things like that. And of course, if you're doing really well in sports, you're going to do really well in enrollment. It just goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, and it'll kind of move us into the next one. But before we go, I think Hilda made a comment. I didn't know Carolina was a public school. And yes, Hilda, it is. Anytime you see UNC Pembroke, UNC Chapel Hill,
UNC Charlotte,
UNC Wilmington, all of those are under the UNC school system. Fayetteville State has gone under that. A&T has gone under that system. Winston-Salem State has gone under there. North Carolina Central. And now you see all that money that has come in, because if you look at Fayetteville State's campus now, you look at Central's campus now, you look at Winston-Salem State, you look at A&T, when they became state schools where basically you're leaving the private sector, but you have to open your books. And we're seeing a lot about the books when it's hidden with one of the local schools, St. Aug, and I think Shaw's going to be right behind them, because they're not audited, but they're also not accredited by the UNC system, because in order to be that, you have to maintain a standard. Like I was at Shaw in public administration and emergency management, and it was my last semester, and they dropped the program. So I took my transcript, just needed 2 more classes, and I took it over to NC State. And NC State would only take 11 hours out of the 109. Wow. Because they said Shaw wasn't UNC, it wasn't UNC accredited. So, that's what I kind of like tell people, kind of like, if you really want to value your education and you do want to go to a HBCU, entertain going to a school that is at least accredited under the UNC system. So that if you decide to go to UNC or NC State or Duke or Central or any place for higher education, more of the work that you've done will transfer over versus hardly anything. And I'm speaking from example, so I think when we talk about those things, it's definitely something that I think we're only seeing the beginning of the evolution,
Oh yeah.
because now you're having, I think here in North Carolina in the Triangle, they have a baseball high school where these guys are basically they're on a homeschool curriculum, but all
Mhm.
they do most of the day is train for baseball. And,
Right.
baseball players get drafted at 14 years old.
Hmm.
That's what's crazy. Like, they're literally drafted because there's so much money in baseball. And
Yeah.
people will say, like in the video earlier, it was the young man, the baseball player, they understand. And people are like, I don't understand why baseball, the players get paid so much money. And I said, well, if you look at a basketball arena, it's 18 to 21,000 seats, and that's a pretty large basketball arena. You look
Hmm.
at a football stadium, you're looking at 60, 65,000 seats to 109, 111, like up in Michigan. But you look at a baseball stadium and you're talking about like 150,000, and they sell out every game. And then you look at the concession. So they make all that money, but they literally have a school here in North Carolina that's all they do. They homeschool and they just train. Pitchers throw all day. They learn how to do sliders, change ups. Catchers are learning how to build that core strength. They're working on speed, agility, because it's that much money in it. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to start seeing more. In the video they showed what's going on in California, but I definitely think that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg right now. And I think that's going to be a double-edged sword. It can be a positive in cases, but it can also be a negative. Do you agree with that, or?
No, I
Yeah.
mean, I agree with you on that. I think that to go to a school that's particularly for one sport, in my opinion, I think is a mistake. But again, kids are starting to make money in high school, right? So you don't have to make it to the league to get rich now. I think they were saying Carson Beck got what, $4 or $5 million to go to Miami last year. Miami just grabbed the quarterback for Duke, and they were saying upwards of $10 million. And they're giving him a house. The kid left Florida to go to Baylor, and he has a multi-million-dollar mansion on the golf course. Like you didn't see that 10 years ago. I mean, you really didn't see it 5 years ago. And now I think they're going to start reining it in. I mean, I think Nick Saban went up there yesterday or one of these days this week talking about the NIL and how it's not sustainable because of the amount of money that's going in there that they're going to have to start taking away from education in order to keep up with the sports. And I can see the same thing when it comes to these high schools where you're strictly building a high school for one particular sport. Now, if you're going to a private school that has multiple sports and you're going there for the education, but also the sports, I can understand that. Same thing for like a public school or a magnet school where you may be going for a certain project, a certain type of STEM program. Whether it may be engineering or technical or science, where you say, hey, this is what I want to do after. So I want to go ahead and get a leg up on that. I mean, there's a lot of Wake County public schools that have those programs that really get these kids set up for, with some of them, they can have associate's degrees by the time they get out of high school, which I think is great. Didn't have that when I was around. So I think the education is a lot further advanced than what it was, 20, 30 years ago. But I feel like if you are going to build a school, particularly for, let's say, soccer, it's World Cup, probably the biggest sporting event in the world. There's more soccer fans than any other sport because it's everywhere. It may make sense to a parent. Hey, I'm going to send this kid here because all we want to do is work on soccer. But then so many minor leagues, your kid can go professional, but it doesn't mean they're going to make money. They may not be in the right league or the right standing. So I think a lot of them aren't necessarily looking at, is my kid going to go pro? I think they're looking at, can my kid be good enough to get $200,000-$300,000 a year while they're in college, to go ahead and get them a head start on everybody else. Like, some kids are coming out with $200,000 in debt. Some kids are coming out of college with $200,000-$300,000 in the bank. Which kid would you rather have? And I think that's really what a lot of parents are looking at.
So we talked about NIL, but let's look at what's attached to the NIL, the transfer portal. I know before nobody could transfer to the end of the season. And then also a lot of times, depending on when they entered the transfer portal, they had to sit out a whole year. But now people are able to start participating as soon as they transfer. So we're starting to see athletes that's been in school, in college for 4 years, and they've been to 4 different schools. 5 years been to 5 different schools.
Yeah.
And I think because they're chasing that NIL. I remember University of Miami, they had won their game in the Sweet 16. And some of the players asked to have a meeting with the coach, and the coach did a press conference on it. And they was like, look, coach, we need more money. If we don't get this money, we're not playing in the grade 8. We're not playing in the next round.
Yeah.
And so those kids didn't play in the next round because the coach couldn't, like, on the spot say, hey, I need to pay these guys $100,000 a game, or he just couldn't authorize that, I guess. So I think it's getting to the point. To me, college was about teaching, like my son, for example, how to be resilient, how to endure, how to win with your team, how to lose with your team. How to go in the trenches with your team, and it built that brotherhood. I remember somebody spoke to him about there was something about joining a frat, and they were like, oh, it's like a brotherhood. He's like, well, football is my brotherhood.
Yeah.
Nobody goes through a season of hell of a season. Like nothing's gonna compare to that.
Yeah.
We win, we bleed, we sweat together, all those things. So I think kids with the NIL, even the guy that played for Colorado, Seton, I think the O-lineman.
Gordon Seton, he went to LSU. I know that.
Yeah, and at first he went into Colorado. He was like, when people were transferring away, he was like, man, it ain't no brotherhood. I ain't never leaving. When I say I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna be here. And then when he started seeing guys that he felt wasn't as good as him getting paid millions more, he's at LSU, and people say he was crazy for asking what he wanted. I think what was it, 4 or 5 million a year?
Yeah.
And LSU, their boosters, guess what they did? They got it for him.
People think Louisiana got money, but you got to remember where they got a lot of oil down there and natural gas. There's some money in
but the boosters, you saw the TikTok when they won the national championship.
Yeah, had the lady dancing.
It had the white lady doing the gap dance.
Yeah.
I told somebody, they was like, oh, that's the coach's wife. I said, no, that's not. I said, her husband played for LSU, but he also runs the dock. Or he has a company, so they've given millions. So I tell people, like, if HBCUs, like I know Willie Gary gave to Shaw University, he built the whole building, it was named after him. But all the people that's gone through A&T that are famous now, all the A&T has more engineers in this world than any other college, like period. Not just HBCU, but there's more engineers that have come out of A&T than any other college in the world. So it's like, I know engineering, anything with STEM is money, and so how come, thanks Hilda for that compliment. We appreciate you. Why A&T should have the largest HBCU NIL?
Yeah, their collective should be crazy.
They brag about being the world's biggest HBCU, which is not a lie. Especially during the Tariq Cohen, my son's years. I think my son, the 4 years he was there, they only lost like 3 games total.
Yeah.
Like they the Broadway years, like even Washington when he came in, but there's no reason why A&T shouldn't be dominating NIL for mid-majors. Like there's no reason. All the money. When I go to the games to Jiho, you see out there everybody dressed up, gussied, have all their Aggie gear. I see all these Bentleys, Rolls Royce, Mercedes, and all, and they begging people to give money. You know, begging, y'all want us to continue on this level. We need y'all to get, and nobody's giving. You know, some people are, but it's just if we had that same dedication at A&T, that LSU, I know there's a lot of millionaires that graduated from A&T.
Yep.
But you know, give back. It's a write-off anyway. It's like what you got to lose. You know, but that's a tangent on that. But I wanted to play this video just on the portal, and I just wanted to get your thoughts. It's about 2 minutes, so let me know your thoughts on this one.
In college football, driven by big bucks, as players like Indiana's Heisman winner Fernando Mendoza to Ole Miss's Trinidad Chambliss seeking out major paydays, helped by switching schools.
How has NIL changed college sports and the competitive landscape as we know it?
NIL has actually, interestingly, added competitive balance. We're seeing pretty much every school, at least in the power conferences, having a real shot of winning a title.
The new rules driving a growing movement of athletes fighting to stay in school. Chambliss appealing to get a 6th year of eligibility, even though some analysts think he could see his name called in the NFL draft. The NCAA ultimately denying his request for a medical exemption after his lawyer reportedly sent multiple letters to the NCAA to ask for another year of eligibility. Players can earn millions from name, image, and likeness, or NIL deals, which started a few years ago. But now colleges can also use a portion of athletic revenue to pay players directly after a settlement this summer. That money, however, is capped, and attorney Darren Heitner, who served as legal counsel for hundreds of college athletes, says it isn't enough alone to draw top talent.
The reality is, to compete in this ecosystem, you can't be operating at the cap of $20.5 million.
Coinciding with the newfound revenues is a transfer portal system.
It created like the free market system every year for every player.
Effectively free agency that has caused a seismic shift in college sports.
The fact that guys can transfer multiple times and not sit for a year means that you're not going to wait. You're going to be very impatient.
Schools are also now boosted by wealthy alums like billionaire Mark Cuban, who went to Indiana, bankrolling its efforts to convince top athletes to transfer. As the multi-million-dollar deals pile up, so too does the controversy after several players have tried to back out of deals with schools. Heitner says the confusing new web of contracts with these athletes who are not considered employees is uncharted territory.
Nobody yet really knows the enforceability or the level of enforceability of these contracts because they haven't really been tested.
Meantime, the cost of college has skyrocketed in the last 30 years, and now even the students at some schools are being asked to chip in with additional fees going to athletic departments.
I think that's a really tough pill to swallow when you see like so much money that gets thrown around. Like, why should it be on the students who are enrolled in this college to have to pay for that?
As college sports start to look a whole lot more like the pros. Sam Brock, NBC News.
What do you think about that?
I mean, it's a very informative video. Yeah, I mean, I can understand it. I mean, it's business at that point, right? Coaches can leave at any moment. Just like you were talking about Jordan Seaton, who said, I'm never leaving Colorado. Same thing, coaches will say, hey, I'm never leaving. I hear the rumors. I'm not going nowhere. This is where I want to be. And then they're on a plane to another place as soon as that press conference is over with. You know, so I think it's fair for kids to have that right to transfer in. What I don't like is how many years. And I feel like at some point when you start hitting 25, 26, and you're playing against 18, 19-year-olds, I feel like that's more semi-amateur. Like there should be an age cap, in my opinion. I think once you hit a certain age, whether injuries or not injuries or anything like that, it's kind of like you gotta go because, like I said, we're in a time and age now where it's really affected high school recruiting. Like you said, if you're not a guy that can come in there and be an impact player, most colleges, especially you're talking about Power 4, they're not necessarily looking for you. So you're going to have to go. And I hear people all the time, I don't want to play JUCO. I don't want to play D2. I don't want to play this. You might not have a choice. At this point, you got to get in where you fit in, and then you got to prove yourself. I remember the kid from Roseville, quarterback, who I thought was an excellent quarterback. He wound up going to a lower FCS school, set freshman records, did exactly what he had to do. He had the opportunity. I'm pretty sure that's not where he wanted to go at first. His potential and his talent should have took him somewhere else. But for whatever reason, he didn't get those opportunities, right? Could have been an IL, could have been so many other different things. But when he got his opportunity, he shined, right? Mm-hmm. And now he's playing at a major college. And from what I hear, got a bag to do it. And so I tell kids that I coach and I mentor, it's all about an opportunity, and no matter where your opportunity comes, you just got to take it. And with the transfer, it allows you to take an opportunity that might not have been what you really wanted, but it could have been what you needed, right? Because maybe it humbled you a little bit. Maybe it let you know you might not have been as good as you thought you were. Maybe there were some things you need to work on. But I feel like when you get to those D2 programs, D1 programs, they're going to be the ones that are really going to develop you. When you get to Power 4, you got to be ready. Like their job is dependent on how well you play. They have to win now. I mean, you look at Indiana, if you told me 10 years ago Indiana would win a national championship, I would have bet money they wouldn't. I would have put anything I had in the bank. Yeah. Ain't no way in the world Indiana's winning a chance. If it ain't Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan, even Michigan State here and there, that's all. That's the only thing coming out of the Big Ten. That's like, might as well say, hey, Mississippi State's going to win that championship. Because Indiana was like the bottom of the barrel. But the coach that went there, like you said, Google him, he wins, and he does. And so that's why I was sitting there and I said, I think it's great for players, because the last thing you want to do is go play for a coach, be with a coach, and then find out that coach left and the new coach come in and you don't fit that system. So one or two things are going to happen anyway. You're either going to be kicked off the depth chart, your scholarship's not going to be renewed, because what a lot of people don't understand, most of these scholarships are year to year. Mm-hmm. They're not like, oh, I signed a scholarship, I'm there for 4 years. No. And I think it's good for players, because there's some coaches that come in the program and they don't want you. And they're telling kids, hey, you got to go in the transfer portal. The downside about the transfer portal to me is that most kids that go in there don't find another school. Mm-hmm. Some kids that, hey, I don't want to stay here no more. I don't want to work here. I think I'm better than this. You might be retiring. There's a lot of them that are still just in there floating. And there's some that I thought were really good that I thought would get picked up quicker, but they haven't. And again, I don't know what coaches are looking at on their roster and what they want to do. But like I said, if you want to be Power 4, you have to be that guy. Like you can't be good on a team. You have to dominate competition no matter who you're playing.
Yeah, and I think one of the main reasons why is because that portal is just loaded. And when I say loaded, I mean experience.
Yeah.
You look at Indiana, they didn't have, I believe, no 3 or 4 stars or 5 stars on their whole roster. No. But they were one of the oldest college teams.
Yeah, they were basically the age of like the Cleveland Browns. Like they literally were an NFL team.
Like they literally. So I tell people that's why they had that calmness under pressure. Mm-hmm. They've already been through it. And It was like, I think they interviewed the coach and he said, he was at James Madison. Yep. And James Madison, that program was growing like huge. Mm-hmm. And next thing I know, he transferred, he gets the job at Indiana. And they was interviewing him. He's like, yeah, I thought maybe, 3 or 4 kids would come with me, but 14 kids came and they were all starters, you know, and it's kind of like when Deion came to Colorado, he's like, look, I got my dogs coming.
Got my Louis.
The Louis. He was like, he was letting them know, if you ain't ready to compete, go ahead and hit that portal. Yeah. He was like, he knows the work that the guys at Jackson was doing. Yeah. So he's like, he knows they have that work ethic. He's like, at Colorado, y'all was just happy with being on the team. Mm-hmm. Whether you won or lost, all you cared about, okay, I'm on the team, I'm getting my school paid for. And
Right.
that's all they cared about. But I think when it comes to me, the downside of the portal is you have the portal. To me, the double-edged sword is you have some kids that they don't have reality.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you play Pop Warner, AAU basketball, you have those parents that gas their kids up. They the next Allen Iverson, or they the next LeBron James. You know, you the next LeBron James, but you're in the 9th grade and you just 5'2".
Yeah.
You know, they don't have that reality. And I think also the portal, a coach pushes a player, you know, fuss them out, not physically push them, but, you know, I used to tell the athletes I work with that if a coach is quiet, I said, that's when there's something wrong. A coach is only going to get on you when he expects more of you. And I said, so when if he's quiet, that means you're either about to lose your scholarship, or, you know, it's not going to be renewed for the first year, you know, after the first year, and you're going to have to end up trying to find something. And I tell people all the time, these college coaches are friends because they know the coaching carousel.
Yeah.
Like, you know, their boy, I remember Kennesaw State, the staff there's a new program that they were recruiting my son, and went down there. My son loved the school, even though they didn't have a football team yet. And next thing you know, they're just winning, they're dominating their conference, and then somebody at Navy gets fired. Next thing you know, half the defensive coordinator, linebacker coach, all of them are up at Navy.
Yep.
You know, like they all call, and I you know, I still keep in touch with a lot of those coaches that recruited my son, and they're like, you know, one of them went from Rutgers to what was it, Minnesota. You know, he was like, hey, he got a job. You know, I got to stay employed. I got bills to pay.
Yeah.
You know, so I tell people, like, kids, you can't call a coach and try to sneak and do it. That coach is going to reach out and be like, hey, you know, this kid just gave me a call. You know, you might just want to, and it's not for ill will. It's because their associates, they may be really good friends, and they think that's foul. You know, they're like, I'm gonna tell this kid, talk to your position coach first.
Yeah.
If you're not getting the snaps you want, ask them what you're not doing. Yeah. You know, why aren't you, like, you're not begging for time. You're begging for them to tell you why you're not getting snaps. Yeah. Is it my work ethic? Is it like I'm just not processing the playbook? You know, and I tell people in high school, the most important tool, and you mentioned it earlier, is being able to watch film. Not look for the highlights, but look for the mistakes.
Yep.
Because you know, I mentioned to you before, anytime that I receive highlight tapes, the first thing I ask the parent is, how much time does he spend studying film? And most of the time, it's hardly any. They just go on Huddle, piece something together, and I'm sitting there like, and then they make sure all this music is. Every college coach that I've spoken to, when they watch film, they cut the volume all the way down.
Right.
And they sit there and they watch it only for like 15 seconds. You know, so these kids be sending out, you know, have 8-10-minute highlight tapes of different angles of the same tackle. And I told this one guy, I said, man, he had the same tackle just from 3 different angles.
Yeah.
I said, it only needs to be in there. And matter of fact, the tackle is not important. It's how he was able to fill that gap.
Right.
You know, it's one thing if it's a blown play and the guy running to you and you just wrap him up, but they want to see that. So I think studying film is definitely important. But when it comes to, the portal, I just wanted to ask you, just kind of like,
well, I mean,
hot seat question, because I know you mentioned LSU.
Yep.
And who's the coach now of LSU?
Lane Kiffin. He fits right in. He fits right in down there, though.
Well, let me ask you this:
Mm-hmm.
how he got to LSU?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the season should have been over prior to him going there, because LSU was still in the playoffs, right?
No. We wasn't in the playoffs. We had a bowl game, but
they was playing. Who they play in the bowl game?
Kelly got fired. I can't remember. Who we played in the bowl game. It didn't matter. But here's the thing with Lane Kiffin. Everybody knew he was going to be coaching somewhere. Mm-hmm. No matter how good Ole Miss is, let's just be honest. In the SEC, they ain't got the most money. Yeah. They can't compete with Tennessee. They definitely can't compete with Vanderbilt, who's building up their stadium. You see what NIL did for them. Yeah. They can't compete with Texas A&M. You got Texas, you got Oklahoma, you got LSU. Mm-hmm. It's hard for him to even get night games. One of the things he complained about is having students come out to the games when they play, Joe Blow University down the road. The kids don't want to come out, so half the stadium is empty.
Yeah,
you don't have that problem at LSU. Saturday night in Death Valley, 100,000. They've been drinking since Wednesday. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be rowdy. It don't matter who you play. Like it's just he's played at that stadium and been in those games where he should have won. Like when LSU beat them with Brian Kelly in overtime. Mm-hmm. They should have won that game. But it's something about that atmosphere. It's something about when you go to an Alabama, 100,000, or Ohio State, in
Michigan, the big house
in Michigan. Like it's something about those different type of things. So when you start looking at the way he left, I don't think it was all on him. I think he pretty much was being honest with them. He could have lied and be like, nah, I'm not going to take the job, and then took it. I think what he did is he said, hey, I want to go to LSU. Well, LSU and Ole Miss are rivals. Mm-hmm. So I think had he said, hey, I'm going to coach at North Carolina, I'm taking North Carolina job, they would have let him finish out the season.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to win that championship. What they didn't want him to do is win that championship, then go to LSU. So what they were worried about is him taking all those kids to LSU, which is why they said, no, you can't come here. But I want you to keep your coaching staff here. Now, he could have easily told those guys, hey, anybody stay, you're not going to come to LSU. But he still let them coach. And then all they did was try to get him in trouble because he was talking to his coaching staff. So it's like a lot of people look at it and say, hey, he's the bad guy. I think for once he actually matured and did the right thing, and he got killed for it. But at the same time, there's always two sides to every story, because those same coaches that said Lane Kiffin's a dirtbag, didn't do this. Well, look what they did to Clemson and old Dabo Swinney with the linebacker from Cal. That kid was in classes at practice with Clemson. He came to Dabo, showed text message where the head coach from Ole Miss was offering him $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah, Dabo's having a hard time adapting to the NIL era.
Well, I went to Clemson with a couple players on one of their invites, and I will say this: after speaking to Dabo, I understand why he believes what he believes. And I don't think they're not against paying players, but the way they work that system, I think he looks at it just like Nick Saban said, or who was it that said, I'll never coach NFL because no player's worth more money than me. I'm the coach.
Yeah.
And I think he looks at that from that aspect. I mean, they've got a program up there. I mean, they've had 100% employment for like 8 years straight. They have a higher graduation rate than Yale, any Ivy League school. And that's for like the last 18 years since he's been there. So it's like he's really high on the academics. It's like, yeah, you can get to the NFL. We're going to teach you how to become men. They're really big on that. They're really big on some of these other different things. So it definitely changed my mindset about Clemson, because as an LSU fan, it's like LSU has the real Death Valley. But I will say that speaking to some of those coaches and stuff like that, it's a genuine family up there. Like they want guys that want to be there, that want to be family. Like you can always come back to Clemson. And I heard somebody tell a joke one time where they said, now with the new day and age with NILs, like, you're going to be watching Monday Night Football and they're going to say, hey, my name's Carl Jackson, UNC, NC State, Chapel Hill, Miami, Florida, LSU, Texas, because all the different colleges that they're going to. It's like they're going to have to start cutting off the universities, because which one do you pick? If you went to 5-6 different universities and they say, hey, which one are you going to use up there? Which one do you use? And I think transfers are good, because LSU won that championship with Joe Burrow, but he was a graduate transfer, so he came in, got a master's degree, stuff like that. So I feel like there's going to be a ton of tampering, and I feel like there's a ton of tampering going on now. I don't think anybody can throw stones in the glass house, because I think everybody does it. And so that's why when people are like, oh, well, Lane Kiffin is this, Lane Kiffin is just like every other coach out there right now.
Yeah, me personally, I didn't perceive that for Lane Kiffin. I actually liked him.
I like him.
And
I like a little trash talk.
My thing was about if your team was still playing, in the bowl, or if the season wasn't over, I felt like it should still be like no contact. You don't come on campus, because I even feel you have players that colleges are offering them millions to come, and we need the playbook. Like, because if you watch enough film, if you're a decent, not the greatest, if you're a decent college player, you know the playbook. There may be some audibles, some, certain signals that are changed up for the main thing, but the schemes, that. And I feel like some colleges are paying players to get just that advantage, because now, I think it's messed up. I believe it was Michigan where they got in trouble because they were reading the signals and signs and stuff. And I'm sitting there like, I think every college does that. Like,
they did it in the pros.
Yeah, like why? That's why they have the thing over their mouth when they talking, because they know that their program has probably paid professional lip readers, to like, we need to know what they're saying. So I just think like certain things, you just have to be consistent with it. And I think a lot of times we don't see that. And when it comes to the transfer portal and NIL, the problem that they did was they had zero regulation on it.
Yep.
It was no guidelines. So now you have all these kids, let's say class of 2028, class of 2029, all these parents, they're looking at all the millions that these kids are getting. And now you're going to put in regulation and say, well, the max that somebody can get is $1 million. Down from 5 million being max. They're going to be like, I honestly believe that college football players and basketball players, they will strike. Like all the revenue. Who's the two most highest generating sports in college athletics? Football and basketball.
Yeah, that pays for everything.
If those jokers strike, let's say they did a strike during March Madness, that's billions of dollars in revenue loss. Like they literally can get whatever they want. And I think because you done spoiled this young generation with these millions, they will strike. Like they won't strike because the NAACP told them to. They'll strike because they want the same thing the people before. They're not going to put up with it.
I think the hardest thing about that is there's so many schools though, and there's so many athletes. So if you go strike, you don't think there's a kid that's playing at Ferris State that doesn't want to go and play at NC State?
Oh,
definitely different. So I don't feel like it would hurt the college game as much as it would the NFL, for the simple fact that, you can go to an NC State game where they're 9-0 or 3-7, it's packed.
Oh yeah, you have NC State. I went to the last NC State and Duke game, and I saw the Boozer brothers playing.
Yeah,
and I was like, one is all the hype, The other one, it was just a package deal.
Yeah.
You know, like
that's how it works, though. Yeah.
Oh, I understand, and I know Carlos ain't mad, but
yeah,
I just think like the reason why I mentioned March Madness, because to me, every March Madness team has some type of percent to win the national championship. If you're a team that you're not competing in March Madness, nobody really cares if this kid steps up from Ferris State.
Right.
You know, I think these kids have power because it's March Madness. You are competing for a national championship. And it's almost like anybody could be a sleeper. I forgot what year it was, but you can, they have Cinderella teams for a reason. And I just think like when somebody from Averett University or Ferris State ain't coming into March Madness and dropping 40 points.
There may be a Seth Curry from Davidson walk on to Duke and just start shooting from the three. I mean, the basketball I think is a lot easier to be competitive in because it's only 5 players. Right. So if you get the right 5 players, you can compete with anybody, right? Because it's threes, twos, buckets. It comes down to when NC State had that magical run that they had. It's not like they were a much better team, but they had that big boy that was the center that just could dominate a game for whatever reason. DJ, yeah, and he could just dominate a game. And I mean, took them to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, whatever they went to. But that when you're winning sports, man, you have a lot of pride in your team. I feel like the only way that they would really have true power, you couldn't do it at the beginning of the season because they're just going to replace you. You would have to be going into like the Sweet 16, Elite 8, and say, hey, we're striking. But it would have to be every team. But then there's so many teams, you just pull somebody else in. I think it's so much harder to strike in college because of the amount of teams than it is, like, say, the NBA. There's only a certain amount of teams. The NFL ain't but 32. So if they all strike, who else are you going to pull in? In college, hundreds of schools. So, we saw that when teams, speaking of the transfer portal, when teams wouldn't go play ball games. Look at Notre Dame. Oh, I didn't get into the playoffs. I'm taking my ball and going home. To me, I thought that was a horrible, horrible position to be in. If you're supposed to be this good of a school, you're supposed to be that competitive. Don't lose to Miami. Don't lose to Texas A&M. Neither one of them won their conference. So there's no reason for you to really complain about how you should have been in the playoffs. But now we're in this age now where everybody wants their way and everybody wants to throw around their weight. And the easy fix is make them join a conference, but nobody wants to do this because let's be honest, all these guys, all these ADs, all these people on the board, they're all friends. They all golf at the same country clubs. None of that's really going to change because it's going to affect everybody's pocket. Right. Now they made the rule where Notre Dame, if they win an X amount of games, they can automatically get in. I just don't think that's fair.
Now, do you think that, like, when Notre Dame went all the way, right, they didn't have to split any of their bowl money with the conference?
No.
Because normally, like, you go to a bowl game, you get something, but the conference divvies up all that money. So I look at the SEC, even the Big Ten, like there's 18 teams in the Big Ten.
Right.
They all split that money up, but Notre Dame being independent, they keep everything. So I think there's going to be more schools that are actually this college playoffs. The one thing that I think that's going to start hurting it, because I believe they're about to add a couple more teams, right?
They're trying to go bigger, but I don't know if that'll help it.
You're going to end up with college football going all the way into March, because I think in the NCAA basketball, they're adding like 4 or 6 teams too.
Yeah. It's all about money.
And that's the driving force. Yeah. And that's why I feel like there's more people now. Fandom of colleges are more than professional sports. I think that's why the XFL, the UFL aren't doing as well, because those used to be the development league for the NFL.
Yeah.
And now they got college. And then it's just not college. You got a guy that's NFL 27, about to turn 27, even 28 years old.
Yeah.
Especially
Right.
the guys for COVID. Some of those guys got 8 years.
Yeah.
You know, because they max out the red shirts, the gray shirts, you know, and it's just crazy to see.
They should have doctorate degrees.
Yeah, they should have a dang on PhD.
Yeah.
But you know, I just hope that there comes some type of regulation, but I just don't think that it's going to. I think it's going to get bad, and I don't even see the NCAA. I mean, I look at college now kind of like pro. Like at the pro level, you lose a couple of games, but at the college level, you try not to lose one game.
That's what made it good.
Yeah, it's just like it's just like one game. Oh man, that's our, you know, now we're not going to get one home game or a guaranteed home game all the way through. You know, it's just they put so much into it each game. Yeah. And that's why I used to like women's college. Before the WNBA, it was like fundamental basketball, but that was it.
Yeah.
Now after, you know, I think it still has some ways to go, but college to me has definitely outshined pro athletics, even though there's more money in pro as far as what the organizations make. Yeah. But these college programs, like, you know, I've been to NC. Everybody knew NC State was going to get blown out by Duke. But when you got in that arena, all you saw was red and white.
Right.
You know, like they're going to have that support.
Yeah. And I totally agree. Like, that's why I said I don't know if a strike would work at college, because those fans, regardless who's on the field, they're going to love who's out there. What I loved about college is, you knew if a guy came who was going to be there for 3-4 years, I can, you know, cheer that guy on for 3-4 years. But now the rosters are recycling every year. It's hard to sit there and say, okay, well, you know, this is a person I can put my, you know, I can root behind. I can put my energy into, you know, like what I used to love about LSU, you know, DBU, like you had all these DBs that were coming in as freshmen and you were excited about it because you knew in 2-3 years, they were going to leave their junior year.
Yeah.
But man, for those 2-3 years, Patrick Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, we had Leonard Fournette at running back, Jeremy Hill. Like, it was just so many things that you could do that you know, you knew they wasn't leaving. Where if that was 10-12 years ago, I mean, how many of those would have stayed? You know, I think it takes away from what college is when you're an athlete. It's about development. It's about basically becoming a man, but most importantly about having that family. Like you said, it's a brotherhood. But I think if you can keep transferring as much as you can, it breaks up the brotherhood. Because if I'm only with you for 6 months out of the year, how much can we really go through? I mean, we might go through this season, but then I'm out. You know, but I feel like kids should be able to transfer. I feel like there should be an age limit, and I feel like there should be a transfer limit. Like, I don't know if you should go somewhere, you know, every year. Like, you need to do your due diligence, make sure you go to the right program, and then go there, because it teaches the kids not to face adversity. It teaches the kids not to deal with problems. Now you're telling them, hey, I can just run away from everything. Now, some of them are leaving because they got an opportunity and they performed and they did well in the opportunity. That's what they should do, right? Like, go make that money. If you're leaving because, hey, you know, they brought in somebody else and I don't want to compete, that's the wrong thing. Because guess what? When you get in the workforce, you're going to have to compete. Like, no matter whatever you do, you're going to have to compete. And my job, if I don't do as well as other people, they're going to find somebody that can do better than me. So you have to perform at a high. You have to perform highly every time. Like, you just can't sit there and be upset that, you know, oh, they done brought this guy in, so I'm leaving, because you don't know if that guy's legit or not either. You know, you don't know if he fits that system. You don't know if it works. So I say all that to say this is, at the end of the day, man, I think it's a good thing for transfers. I think they do need to have some rules, some regulations. I feel like it's going to be back. And I know you can remember back to this time. I remember when the number one draft pick would get in the NFL, number one draft pick would get $40-50 million contracts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't get those now, because what they said, why would the kid that ain't proven himself, we give them $50 million, but we can't pay the veterans, right? And now they don't get those guys that money. You see veterans making more money now later on in their career. They don't get it up front. Now that could be a good thing and a bad thing because, NFL is not for long. You're only there for a couple of years. So, if you have a couple of injuries, you might not get that money later down the road. But everybody has their own interpretation of that and their own feelings about it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I really appreciate you joining me today to cover these topics. I definitely respect your insight. That's the reason why I invited you on.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of things down the pipeline that I do want to talk about, and it comes to like the Pop Warner, prior to high school. Just like, I see the infighting, I see the Facebook battles with people. And my son, we didn't play Pop Warner. We didn't play anything, he didn't touch football as a actual sport until I think 8th grade.
Yeah.
And I think he only did it because he wanted to get like the West Millbrook Male Athlete of the Year.
Yeah.
So he did track, football, and basketball. But he got it. But so he was kind of, when it came to football, he was a late bloomer. But I definitely want to later on have a conversation with you about that aspect, and then the evolution of the 7-on-7s, and and just how because you go with a lot of the young men to a lot of these visits and stuff, just about how that's changing. And basically have a conversation about some of these elite camps, some of these combines, kind of like help people navigate through what's just somebody trying to make some money or what's going to actually give you some exposure.
Yeah.
So I definitely invite you for that. And I do want to invite everybody that was watching to, just subscribe, follow. We have an episode every Wednesday at 7. And our next episode is going to be the red flag conversation. And we're basically going to be talking about some things that Black men perceive as red flags, when looking at Black women and vice versa. And Tanya Held is going to be the guest panelist there. But I hope everybody enjoys their weekend, and appreciate you taking a ride on the train. Thank you.
Man, thank you for letting me come up here, man. I'll do anything for you. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. All right, just stand by for me.
Okay.